Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined today with Tayte to give our review on A Star Is Born, 2018 version, I guess I should say. This is the third remake of the movie, and this is starring Bradley Cooper in his directional debut, also starring Lady Gaga. And this is actually picking up like a fair bit of Academy Award traction already, possibly Best Picture, maybe Best Director, Best Lead Actor, Lead Actress. There's a lot going for this movie, and it's came fairly out of nowhere, but already the soundtrack and everything, I think a lot of people are taking to this movie. We both saw this weekend, and there's been a whole bunch of other movies come out this weekend. There's been Venom, there's been Johnny English, both of which we will have reviews for as well. But this is going to be the first of the three we wanted to talk about, and I think we're probably going to be talking at great length on this movie. Both of us saw the movie, both of us really enjoyed the movie. And I should say we're going to kick off with spoiler-free to begin with this review. So we will give a warning when we eventually get to spoilers. But seriously, this is a movie where if you don't know anything about the pre-existing property or the older films, then go into this movie completely cold if you can, because I think it will definitely have more impact that way.
I feel so as well because I'll say this now. This is the fourth incarnation of A Star Is Born. The first film was very different. That was in the 1930s, I want to say, maybe 1920s.
1937 was the original one with Janet Gaynor and Frederick March.
That one was about acting, whereas the following incarnations of it with Judy Garland and Barbra Streisand, those were about singers, and this film was also about singers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of went into this film very blind. I hadn't really heard of it at all, or even the previous incarnations of it. And I saw the trailer literally 10-15 minutes before leaving for the cinema. Because I think we were discussing on the chat, like, who's going to see Venom this weekend, who's going to see Johnny English, who's going to see A Star Is Born. And I thought, oh, okay, let's have a look to see what the trailer's like of this film, and I'll see whether I'll go and see it. And I enjoyed the trailer enough to actually warrant me to go and actually watch the performance. And I'll say this straight off the bat, this is my hands down favorite film of the year so far. Not only that, but I have it as my personal pick over Damien Chazelle's First Man for the Oscars at the moment. I'm a massive Damien Chazelle fan. I haven't seen First Man yet. I absolutely adore Whiplash. I absolutely beyond adore La La Land. But right now, in my head, I can't see a film topping this film this year. As far as anything that I've seen in the trailers from any other films. It truly is a special film that you really do need to go and see. Right away, go now.
And especially because this movie, I think all of us have said this, but I've especially been feeling the effects of 2018 in terms of the movies. I have almost straight up given up seeing movies completely at this stage this year. There have been a lot of bad ones, a lot of underwhelming ones, a hell of a lot of forgettable ones.
I'd say, Chris, that was, we had a massive lull in the last month. We didn't really have any major big releases in September that really stood out for me. I know that Crazy Rich Asians did very well at the box office. I've been yet to see that, and I'll probably see that when it comes out on DVD release or online or something like that. Because that film does intrigue me of how well it's done and the good reviews it's been getting, but it wasn't enough to drive me to go and see it. However, this month we seem to be having so many different films coming out. It's the start of Oscar season. We've also got Christmas films being advertised and films around kind of different seasons. So we got the Halloween film to come out at the end of the month as well. So this really is, October is a big month for film this year, especially this weekend with the 3 films I've mentioned previously. I've seen 2 of them so far. I'm seeing Venom tomorrow, which I'm really not looking forward to. But I'll say this now, the films that I watched this weekend paled in comparison to A Star Is Born.
Yeah. It's a film that has something to say, and that's kind of a theme that's sort of expressed in this movie with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, and that it's like it's worth having something to say in the way that you say it. And in both of those regards, if we're going for like performances, for example, Bradley Cooper, I've always been a fan of Bradley Cooper. I know he started off in kind of wacky sort of like cringeworthy comedies a little bit when he first started out. I mean, he's the voice of goddamn Rocket Raccoon, and he's great as Rocket Raccoon. But he is flawless in this movie. Both of his understanding of the character that he's playing, in terms of his direction as well. We should talk about the directing, a little bit of history about this film that. Clint.
Do you want to go through the IMDb first for it?
Yes, sure. For anyone who doesn't know the story.
So
yeah.
The story of A Star Is Born is a musician helps a young singer and actress find fame, even as age and alcoholism send his own career down into a downward spiral.
Yeah.
So the best way of putting it was, I think Commode said it best. You've got one person who is starting at the bottom and working her way up.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got that is Lady Gaga's character, by the way, and then you've got Bradley Cooper's character who is at the top and is starting to plummet downhill.
And it's that intersection in the middle, and
the intersection really is where the film kind of starts, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the original director who was on board for this thing was Clint Eastwood, and you can kind of see that when you watch the movie. It is very much in a. You can see a similar style with his movie. I'm very glad Bradley Cooper did it, though, especially in his directorial debut. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing what this guy can direct next, especially because after his opening film, he has a chance of possibly winning Best Picture, Best Director, and a bunch of other awards for it as well, which is paramount.
You get a lot of actors who want to go into directing and want to go into filmmaking, stuff like that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it works perfectly well.
Yeah.
And for a first-time director who is also a previous actor, to go in, and I definitely think he's going to be nominated for Best Director.
Mm-hmm.
And, he has a very good chance of winning it, although he is up against, once again, Damien Chazelle. I think it's a very good start to his directing career.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have helped by the fact that this material isn't new.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say the one flaw to this film is that it isn't an original concept, and I really do love the ideas that are brought forward by original concepts. But saying that, this film takes what is previously done in the previous Star Is Born incarnations and turns it into something completely different.
Yeah.
What you've seen from the other films that have been made previously.
I think what the good thing about this, and I should open with this as well, I haven't seen any of the previous versions of A Star Is Born. I wasn't aware until like a week ago that this was even a remake. I thought this was a completely original concept. So hearing about that, obviously this has been, done to death almost at this point. But I think what the good thing about this is, it's such a, a story that can permeate time and different generations, to the point where now is we essentially have A Star Is Born for a bunch of different generations.
Every single generation.
Yeah.
And very interesting to see when the next one picks up, because something that I've noticed, because I've seen clips from the previous Star Is Born films. One thing that is clearly obvious is that the type of music used in every single film is very different. And in the previous incarnation, we have the Barbra Streisand version, which is a little bit more kind of poppy kind of feel to it, whilst this one has a very kind of rock-centric and does start to go maybe a little tone into poppy towards the end. But the popular music of that time is very different to the popular music of this time.
Yeah.
So we get to see a different evolution of the artists in the one that is making a rise and the one that is making a fall. It makes for a very interesting character study of the two people and their intertwined relationship.
Maybe not so much in terms of Bradley Cooper, but I think definitely in terms of the Lady Gaga character as well, who we'll talk about in a minute. I think there's definitely a sense of an element of her real life possibly coming into it as well. Very sort of meta with some things that she says, possibly stuff that she's gone through. And I think I saw this, I don't know if this is Commode's review as well, where he says that it's such a unique experience to see Lady Gaga playing this character who's obviously, selling out stadiums, won countless awards, everything like that. She's an absolute star, playing someone who is just starting out in that career path and doing it in such a believable way as well. With someone like that, and I mean, I know that Lady Gaga has acted before. She did something in American Horror Story. She's been in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. So she's not completely new to acting, but I would say she's still very much a newcomer in terms of the acting. You might think she's not that great. She is fantastic in this movie. The chemistry that she has with Bradley Cooper is believable. The two hit off right from the beginning, and you understand them. It's not sort of a very cringy Rock of Ages kind of way that these two fall together. You get the sense that each person sees something in the other person that not necessarily help them progress, but is the person they need in that moment in their lives. She needed that helping hand. We see her home life as well, where her dad, although he loves her, he's not very supportive and he kind of borderline puts her down quite a lot. She needed that helping hand to, follow her dreams. And also Bradley Cooper, who's this absolutely irreparably broken man. He was that kind of muse that he saw in her. He wanted to help her and reach that dream that she had, which was almost like a passion for him as well at the same time.
It doesn't really spoil the film, but I'd say that without really going too deep into the characters, there was always a sense that the relationship was created because he wanted to fix himself.
Yeah.
And she wanted to kind of get there as an artist. She'd almost given up on it. And that's the whole sense of the film. The whole purpose of the film is to show you that stars can really be born at any point in time due to circumstance. It's a lot to do with confidence in this film, and where confidence can take you, what confidence can do to you. Also has a lot to do with the struggles of addiction, and to do with just kind of general relationships and how they form and how they stay together. I just think, for me personally, it's just a very insightful film and a very enjoyable experience. My cinema was actually quite full for the screening. And I'll tell you now, by the end, it was complete dead silence.
Yeah.
Like, people sat down, they didn't stand up immediately as soon as the credits rolled. They sat there and it lingered. It stayed with you for maybe half a minute to a minute. And then people slowly started to kind of make their way towards the exit, which is the kind of impact that you want to feel from a film.
Yeah, it's staying power. This is why I go to the movies. Like, I want to feel something when that movie's finished. Where it doesn't have to be sad or happy. It can be exciting. It can be exhilarating. It can be, as long as I feel something and don't feel like, oh, I've just wasted. Because I mean, this is a fairly long movie. I think this is about 2 hours 20 minutes. I think it's getting up there.
Yeah, it's 2 hours 15 minutes.
But it never felt boring to me. It moves at a great pace, and the characters are so interesting, and you want to see more of them. That you could go for longer if you wanted to, because their relationship is, and the rise and pitfalls of their relationships are really interesting to watch as well. You are really locked in with those characters. And in the comments, we've got Elizabeth Bradley, who's put actor becoming singer and a singer becoming an actor, both nailed it, and I couldn't agree more. Bradley Cooper, as I said, I haven't really seen much of his work, but you believe it that he's a rock, like a southern rock singer.
Can we quickly in the non-spoiler section talk about the actual music in this film?
Yes, I think we have to.
The opening scene puts you in a concert and makes you feel like you're actually in that concert.
Yeah.
Which is something that I haven't really felt in a film that I can remember from an actual cinema experience, where I felt like, wow, I'm actually in a concert. He truly proved that he has, first of all, a great voice.
Yeah.
Really good voice, and I would happily buy his album.
Right, Disney. We just had another comment from a Disney fan, Disney 65 fan. Sorry, put who knew Bradley could sing so good? Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to listen to this album again.
Seriously, I mean, we all knew that Lady Gaga could sing. I know that she has put out some very kind of, I would personally call it poppy trash, because I really don't like her kind of music that she's put out in the past. But I went to see a U2 concert in New York, and she actually showed up for one of the songs. She sang one of their slower songs, and she had a brilliant voice. And it was toned down and toned back, and there was a lot more emotion put into it. And this performance is really a stripped back version of that character. That character does slowly start to seep out, maybe towards the end a little bit, but throughout the main portion of the film, you're actually hearing the bare bones of like a talented artist. And Bradley Cooper does exactly the same with his character, who's already a well-established singer in this film's universe. A really enjoyable kind of performance that he put on. Every time they cut to him on stage and every time he's doing a performance, you actually feel like, wow, this guy is like a mega star singer out there, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
They really do a good job of selling the crowd to you. And especially they released the song "Shallow" just before the film was released, and I've been listening to it on repeat. I think it's a phenomenal song.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar buzz that's gonna win best song. Um, I don't think anything's gonna challenge it for that.
I was going to say, I think this movie absolutely has original song and soundtrack locked in at this
Yeah,
point. I think that's a foregone conclusion. I will say, I mean, this might be a surprising admission to some people who have been following the channel or perhaps don't know much about me. I really like Lady Gaga as an artist. I've always said if I'm going like sort of like modern pop, what you tend to get on the charts and stuff like that, I think that by far Lady Gaga shows the most talent, musical versatility. Like I'll agree, when she started out, she was very much sort of your archetypal dance pop, artist, which you get. But she, by God, she has proven herself. She has a phenomenal voice. Across a bunch of different styles. It seems like at this point she can honestly do anything. And I know that obviously sometimes she brings out the absolute vapid dud, pop track like you do get in this soundtrack as well, when we see her becoming more of a pop artist rather than like a country singer, or like um having a song with like any artistic merit to it. It seems very easy, very contemporary, what we'd get on the top 40 charts now, and you do get that side of her. I own the Fame. I own the Fame monster. I own Born This Way, her albums. I don't have her last few, but I think she's great. And I do think that, as I mentioned earlier in the review, not going too much into spoilers, but when she does, get involved with this agent and he's really pushing her career and she's going on tours and she's becoming like the new best upcoming artist,
yeah,
I think Lady Gaga definitely probably took on this role because there were some acknowledgements to her real life, things that she has gone through in her career. Um, and I think that shows, and I think that's important because we really do see that side to Fame that,
yeah,
they talk about very often, which of course is a thing where you could be the most talented person in the world, but if your face doesn't fit, then you've got no place in that industry and you're not going to make it purely based on her looks. There's a line at the beginning of the movie where she mentions that my nose is too big, and I think that's probably something that Lady Gaga has been told in the past. Like, I think that's probably something that she has had to go through. And maybe it did kind of make me look back on her career in a very meta way and think, when I look back at those first couple of albums that she brought out, and there's a line about "we want to dye your hair platinum blonde," which of course she had when she first started out her career in the early 2000s. And I'm thinking, how much of that actually was her? Did she want to do any of that, or was this all brought upon her to get her to that fame?
Yeah, I watched a couple of interviews that she did whilst doing the release of this film, and she said the absolute, literally 10 minutes after they did the final cut, the final, okay, and that's a wrap for the film. 10 minutes after, she went straight to hair and makeup and she got her hair dyed back to blonde because she was so attached to the character that apparently it's still stuck with her. Like, she identified so much with the character in the film that she had to immediately change her image back to what it was usually like. Because in the film, she has her hair dyed like a red color.
Yeah.
From about halfway onwards, she actually was like, "I can't be dealing with this. I can't be dealing with this character. It's too much on me. I need to get out of it." And in all of the interviews afterwards, like with whoever she's being interviewed by, she's always said that character is still with me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get rid of it. Which is a very interesting point to show how far she actually went into the role. And it shows in her acting because, I mean, we've already discussed this. Like, we haven't seen her in American Horror Story, but I was surprised by how good she could act. And I think she's going to get a nomination for Best Actress, and there is a chance that she can win it, which is mental.
And also in a way that she was very happy to portray like most of this film without wearing makeup, like just to be a natural self, which was actually really nice to see for an actress to do that. There aren't many actresses that would do that, I don't think. The original actress that was on board to play this role, I think the original idea for this movie to do a more up-to-date version of A Star is Born originated around like 2011. This was back when Clint Eastwood was going to direct, and Beyonce was going to star as the main character. I don't think you would have seen her go without makeup or anything like that.
Honestly, I don't think that would have worked.
No,
I
I don't
can't
either.
see that working because with Lady Gaga, you've heard her sing some calmer songs in some of her albums. You've heard her bring out that kind of calmer, quieter side of her.
Hmm.
And um, with Beyonce, you've never really kind of seen her tone it back. It's always been she is Queen Bee, and that is where
Yeah.
it's at.
Hmm.
So you've got to kind of balance that up. And I honestly don't think, as far as a Clint Eastwood directed Beyonce film, I can't even bring myself to think of that sentence. I think that would be way too much for me. Um, should we talk about the actual direction of the film?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There's one shot which really stood out for me, which this won't spoil anything for you or anything like that. But it's a shot where Bradley Cooper is in the foreground and he's watching basically Lady Gaga's shadows or reflection of her dancing or performing on
Yes.
screen. And the shot lingers for about 30 seconds, I feel. It's a long
Hmm.
time, but you can see his face kind of slowly change throughout the scene. And I just feel like the only scene that I can really compare it to, surprisingly, is the scene from Brooklyn where Saoirse Ronan is at the start, where she's at the dance and she's stood there and the camera is basically straight on her. She starts with a smile. She's very smiley, and then the camera lingers for a bit too long and sees her smile slowly fade as she's realizing that she's kind of out of the scene and not really involved in anything that's happening.
Hmm.
Um, I think for a directional debut to pick up on points like that, and the way that he was able to direct the concert scenes and the way that he was able to make it feel like we were going on a road trip with these guys, uh, excellent, absolutely amazing. And I
Hmm.
want to see more from Bradley Cooper as a director.
I think this movie was definitely a passion project for him. Not just the fact that, because I know it moved hands and everything like that, but I genuinely believe after seeing this movie, there was so much passion behind the camera, and on the camera. Obviously, I mean, if I was going to compare this movie, um, I kind of want to say there's definitely elements of La La Land in there,
Yeah,
in terms of some of the themes. A little bit of Rock of Ages. Definitely, so definitely La La. I would say La La Land meets Leaving Las Vegas, the Nicolas Cage movie.
yeah.
It has got some of those, like, wonderful musical moments. It has got those two people sort of like maybe growing apart from each other, where fame takes them in a different direction, but it also does have that added brutal realism of addiction and alcoholism, that Leaving Las Vegas has, which actually Nicolas Cage won the Oscar for.
I'll,
So maybe this will be a
I'll point out
repetition of
the
that.
the obvious comparison of what would you sacrifice for fame.
Yeah, it's the
Um,
ultimate cost of fame, isn't it? Really,
being
it's,
there,
yeah.
yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go on to spoilers?
Um, I think we've covered everything really. I'll give a brief overview now, and then we'll move into
Yeah,
spoilers in case people
I
want to
love
tune
talking
out.
about in spoilers about a certain cameo that came in about midway through the film.
Yes, hopefully we're talking about the same. If it is, then we've been very spoilt this year with this particular actor. He's one of my favorite actors. Um, I would absolutely recommend this movie. It's a very powerful movie. I think it's very important. I think the story, although I haven't seen the other incarnations, I think it probably follows the same themes, and I do think they are themes that very, prevalent to every stage of life, every generation of life. I think it told this story in a new way. It told it in a believable way. I think the performances are absolutely head and shoulders above everything in this film. If you had at least one weak link in the main partnership, this movie would have been dead on arrival. Both actors are absolutely phenomenal. You believe Bradley Cooper is a singer. You believe he's this broken man. He has some incredibly poignant moments in this film.
His
And
accent in the film itself, it's so gravelly.
yeah, it reminded me of, like, well, it is almost like he is modeling it after Sam Elliott, who is
I was
also in the
gonna
movie.
say, apparently he did that. He listened to Sam Elliott's voice, and Sam Elliott plays his brother in the film. And he listened to Sam Elliott's voice, and he wanted to almost imitate it to make it feel
Yeah.
like they were more family, and it worked so well.
It's a little bit of like Jeff Bridges in there as well from True
Yeah,
Grit, that like deep, gravelly, sort of mumbly voice. But it works. And Lady Gaga is absolutely fantastic. She looks incredible. She sounds incredible, but she also brings that side of her I never thought I'd see, that very sort of stripped back and raw emotion that she brought to it. And I thought she was fantastic. The music's great. Go out and buy the soundtrack. And I think definitely we are going to see this one come Oscar season. It's getting an earlier release now than some Oscar movies, but this is going to get a re-release. This is going to have some staying power. So if you are curious about it, definitely go and see it. I think it will leave a lasting impression, as it has with a couple of people
yeah.
in the comments section right now.
For me, once again, I feel like so far it's my definite film of the year.
Hmm.
It does bring you hope for Oscar season this year round. There's always that one film that kind of gets you into gear for Oscar season. Last year for me, that was Get Out. That really kind of went, oh, okay, so we're into Oscar season now. But this film not only does that, it completely blows it away. I was never able to see La La Land in cinema, and that is possibly one of my biggest regrets that I've ever had. And if it does ever come back into cinemas, I am going to see it
I
immediately.
saw that movie four or five times in cinema, I think.
Chris,
Five times, I think.
Chris, I think the first time I watched it in maybe like 360p, like
Yeah.
one of the lowest qualities you can watch it. I still cried. Like it got to me. But
We almost cried on the review for La La Land.
my main
Like,
point here is that this film like evokes so much emotion and takes you to a completely different place, completely sells you on the relationship, completely sells you on the highs and lows that come with it. And it left me leaving the cinema stunned completely. And for a film where I'd only just seen the trailer for, hadn't really heard about it, and went into it almost blind, I came out completely and utterly broken by it in every sense of the word. And honestly, I would love First Man to win because of Chazelle, but I wouldn't hold any emotion for it up against this at all.
mhm,
Um,
absolutely.
Honestly, one of the best films I'd say in a long time.
It's definitely in my top five from this year, which actually might not be an exhaustive list. Actually, we've talked about how I've been let down by a lot of films this year. I wonder if I can even get to five movies that I've enjoyed this year. But
Infinity War and Fallout.
Mission Impossible,
Uh,
Deadpool was fine, Black Klansman. So this would be like in the top four.
I mean, I guess for me this is the top at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
So
Should we move into spoilers? And I know you're gonna say you're gonna talk about the cameo of Alec Baldwin. For the
I am indeed. Maybe we
I'm
should have
gonna
given a longer spoiler warning for people, but this is absolute. We're going to just hold our horses at Alec Baldwin for a second. If you haven't seen this movie and you do want to see it, please don't spoil yourself. Like, go into this cold. You will not regret it at all.
Saying that, the cameo of Alec Baldwin doesn't really spoil anything.
No,
If anything, it's an SNL kind of cameo.
It's a blink and you'll miss it cameo kind of, but I have been very spoilt with Alec Baldwin this year, and that's no bad thing. We've had him in Black Klansman in the opening scene, which is great. He's obviously in Mission Impossible Fallout as well, and now I've got him in this. So the more Alec Baldwin, the better. I love that guy.
I will tell you this now. I was actually thinking of a different cameo. I wasn't thinking of Alec Baldwin.
Okay.
I was thinking of the more poignant cameo of Dave Chappelle, another SNL alumni,
Mm.
who played the character of Noodles in the film, who really came in. I thought he was going to be a lot bigger from seeing the first trailer because he kind of sets up the centerpiece. He says in the trailer, like, this is the worst time I've seen you. Like, this is the worst state I've seen you in. And arguably, this was at the moment where he loved Ali the most, Jackson Maine. And it's difficult because the further he got in love with her, the further his addiction affected him. Because it was almost as if the further he dove in deeper with her, the more comfortable she was with him being this drunkard, and the more that pushed him. The dynamics that formed really comes together in the scene where Dave Chappelle's character basically sits him on the grass and basically gives him a chat and basically says, "You can't go on like this forever." And I'd say that was a tipping point of the film. I know that the Grammy moment towards the end of the film was more of kind of a kind of flashing lights, kind of it's happening, but this was kind of the moment where you knew something bad was going to happen because he wasn't accepting it.
Mm.
And I think Chappelle, for a comedy actor who has never ever done like a serious role in his career properly, he provided that kind of wise wisdom that you'd expect from a character of that sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the moment at the Grammys is the absolute low point for the character of Bradley Cooper in the film.
I'll tell you this, I didn't actually see him peeing himself
I
until
didn't clock it
I
until it was
didn't
almost
clock it.
yeah. Yeah,
And then
I think
when
your eyes are kind of focused on Lady Gaga and like the headspace of Bradley Cooper, and then you just hear the
the
sound.
moment where the people gasped, and I was like, "Oh, why are people gasping? He hasn't fainted yet." And I was like, "Oh shit, he's peeing
Oh,
himself." And then she covers him and stuff like that. And
mhm.
we actually had a debate about this in our chat that we have on Facebook.
We
We
did, and I
always
wanted to bring this up because I mean, we're both on point that we both love this film. It's in definitely in our top films of the year, but where we really were completely different, at least on my initial viewing, was the character of Ali, Lady Gaga's character. I had a bitter resentment to this character, like absolutely.
I had a bitter resentment towards Jackson Maine.
Yeah. And I think now we're going to meet at a point where we can meet in the middle because I've had time to think about this movie. I've had conversations with about this movie with other people, and I've really given it some thought. And I think that both aren't great, both have their problems, but that's what makes the character so compelling.
Correct.
Are there ways that I think Lady Gaga could have handled the situation better with her relationship? Absolutely. I think she does go very, very selfish. I think she kind of loses sight of the most important things.
I think it's less selfish and more of the fact that she always intended to make her own career, and she always intended in her mind that she would make it on her own.
Scenes like the moments where she's at the Grammys, though, and she's doing her acceptance speech and she's doing her thank yous.
I want to say the reason why she didn't want to thank Jackson Maine in the first place was because he'd just done a performance which had pissed her off.
Yeah.
Like, he was drunk and drugged and he didn't know what he was doing. Not only that, but he went back to the seat and it was her nomination. It was her big moment. Jackson Maine had had big moments across his entire life. He had already made it as a star. This was really the moment which she could take in her own. This was like the biggest moment in her career, and he almost stole that from her. And I think it is made most poignant by the asshole producer. But I think he has a fair enough point by saying, "You almost ruined her entire career in one moment."
I hated
I hate
the
his
producer in
character,
this
but
film.
I completely believe that is true. That he was so close to ruining her career and ruining her dignity and making it about him in a situation which really wasn't about her. The way that he went about saying that was completely wrong, and I absolutely hated that character amongst everything.
I think that producer knew that he'd probably do something like kill himself. He just wanted him out of the picture so he could focus on being, the big producer who's going to win her all the awards and everything like that. The ultimate fairy tale ending for me of this film is if there was a scene where Lady Gaga had that final confrontation with the producer, or maybe fired him, or maybe came into her own, or said like, "I don't need you anymore," kind of thing. So there was some kind of Hollywood style cliche comeuppance kind of thing for the quote unquote villain of the movie. We don't get that though.
You said that you always thought that she was getting a bit more selfish, she was getting a bit more poppy, and she was kind of turning into a person who she was away from her roots.
Yeah.
I want to say that she resisted it for a very long time because she didn't want the backing dancers, she didn't want to go for the routines, she didn't want to change her hair, she didn't want to do all of that. And she did it because she thought, in the end, it will make me more successful. I have to trust in this person, otherwise I'm not going to make it.
She completely sold out.
She became a yes person. She did sell out in that sense. But at the same time, Jackson Maine should have supported her instead of being jealous.
It's like that moment in La La Land, where he, his dream is to open a jazz club, and he gets that gig in that sort of. He's a big fan of like old jazz, old timey jazz, and he joins that very modern infused jazz band, and he's playing like keyboards and stuff, and he's hating it. It felt like that to me. Completely sold out, and that's what she absolutely did. The scene where she's in the bathtub and she's like got her hair done and she's like stirring like a martini in a glass, and she thinks she's like this big prima donna now that she's got like a record deal or something. That was a horrible side to the character, and as soon as I was greeted with that with her character, I just had this resentment towards her for the rest of the film, because to me it did seem, this is where we differ, it did seem like she had abandoned what she had been taught by Bradley Cooper and what she believed in, and the kind of music that she was writing. All that went out the window for this absolutely vacuous, vapid pop nonsense. And
it's a question I'm going to pitch to you. Was all they was the only thing that was keeping them together the music?
No, not initially. I think both people definitely needed each other, and they had that shared kinship with each other.
At the end.
I think probably at the end, yeah. At that point, like the two of them had completely gone in different directions. Even when she came to see him at when he finally goes to rehab, which was actually my personal favorite scene in the movie, is where he's sat at that table with her and he just breaks down and he just apologizes for
that's the
embarrassing her.
scene that they're going to play when they show his nomination.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking that myself. That really got me. And in fact, that scene in particular got me more than the very end scene did. And I think the end scene, although I did feel absolutely all the emotion that comes with the end scene, and sort of the culmination to everything that had been led up to that point, I didn't feel as sad at the end as I felt I should have done, because I had that resentment to the Lady Gaga character at that point, sort of midway through the movie towards the end. The scene where Bradley Cooper is that broken man and he just, he is coming to the end of his rehab, but he's like, I'm sorry, I've embarrassed you, like that. And he just breaks down in tears. That got me. And every scene that Sam Elliott cried at as well, because it's like
Sam
the Mike.
Elliott.
Yeah, let's talk about Sam Elliott.
Honestly, best supporting actor nomination, of course, because supporting actor nominations, if you have a good enough performance, like there's barely any per year, you maybe get 5 or 6 and one will get left off the list. This will be on the list of best supporting actors as far as nominations concerned. A rock solid character who you can't understand most of the time. As one of the reasons why I want to watch it again, because half the lines he did mumble through, but honest to God, a very down-to-earth character, a person who cared about Jackson so much, and also cared about his happiness and his relationship with Ali, and wanted to go. And the reason why he was there at the SNL gig was to see Ali. It wasn't to see Jackson. And all of the hardship that he went through in his life to make Jackson a star, and what he didn't state that he sacrificed, but what he kind of sacrificed in that sense to get his brother in that position. And the speech that he made at the end where he said, "It wasn't your fault, Ali, it was Jackson's. You can't blame yourself." I think that's fair, and that was a very good performance.
I think what hurt me the most, sort of just bringing it back to the Lady Gaga character, is, and I don't want to make this too personal, I know people in my life that have dealt with addiction, that have depression, and fight it on a constant basis. And to me, when it got to that point where she was more concerned about her fame, like obviously it's career versus personal life, it did feel very much like she abandoned him and he needed that help. And when she did come to him in rehab, although ultimately his choice was to go to rehab by himself, when they had that home life, everything seemed to be going great. But it was just as soon as that producer guy that came in where everything changed. I've got a question to you. Had that producer not had that conversation with Bradley Cooper's character, do you think he would have made a go of it, or do you think he would have still had those suicidal tendencies?
I think he knew it deep down enough, and that scene is it's a top-up scene, I'd say. It's almost like a reminder, because we see the scene where he breaks down, and I think without that producer scene, you could still have exactly the same end result. She'll tell him, "Meet me at the concert." He'll say, "Wait a sec, turn around," and she'll look at him and he'll go, "I just wanted to have one last look at you." I think that would have played out exactly the same.
Yeah.
It was maybe a little bit more eye-opening and allowed the audience a bit more of an insight into almost Jackson's own mind. But I honestly think that the film would have ended exactly the same way.
Yeah.
He was always destined for that fate. And I know in the previous incarnations of the film, they kind of made it ambiguous. They didn't state that it was a suicide. They said it was a car crash. It was Rise of One. But this film shows you.
I think this film's, from a film standpoint, is very clever as well, in that the film does naturally lead up to that point. There's a very clever shot, which I picked up on as soon as I saw it, but alarm bells didn't start ringing until towards the end of the movie. When he plays his opening concert to the film and he gets in the limousine and he's driving off, he passes a billboard and it's a ring of nooses. Yeah. And that kind of sets the tone for his character. It's a good visual signifier. And then ultimately, when you get to the end, it obviously has a huge tie into that. He also has the anecdote that he talks about when he was 13 years old and he tried hanging himself from the ceiling fan, and the ceiling fan fell down and crashed down, and his dad was too drunk to even notice. So there's all these.
I want to say, Chris, when he turned onto that road, he was set on that path for the rest of the
film. Yeah. And I do think that, I mean, it's kind of a bleak thought, but if you do have suicidal thoughts, suicidal tendencies, or attempted suicide attempts, I do think you can get through it. However, I think the option is always there in someone's head. And I don't think it's something that completely can be deleted. And I think that's when we see, like when he said that he's basically wanted to do this since he's 13, I think this has stayed with him throughout all of his life, at least in the back of his mind somewhere. And ultimately, the character of Ali, like she was that push, and he felt that it was the right time for him to do that because then that would allow her to become the star. He wouldn't be holding her back.
It gave him a purpose to do it in the end again.
And even though she could tell herself that, you know, like he wouldn't have held me back, one of her final things in the film when she's like, you know, coming to terms with what's just happened, she says that the last thing I said to him, you know, I lied.
Because she said that she cancelled her tour and but really she hadn't changed at all. She just tried to comfort him.
And
she was to blame, and she told a white lie.
And this is where I've sort of come round more to her character, although I do think she definitely, there is that sudden drop off a cliff switch to her. She completely sells out. She's incredibly selfish. I've never been in a relationship with someone who has had addiction. I've never lived with anyone. I mean, I know I have friends who have gone through that, but I've never lived in that situation. I've never like tried to strive for a career where I've also been having to look after this person along the side. And maybe that does hamstring you. And maybe after a while, there comes a point where you just can't be around someone like that anymore, because there's a line from a movie or something, it might be BoJack Horseman, I don't know, where if you stay around someone long enough, you're just going to get dragged into that pit with them. Yeah.
It was the drowning.
That was it. Yeah.
And as Wanakova said to BoJack, sometimes you got to let a person drown before you can save them.
Yeah. And I think at that point, his character was so irreparably broken, like, yeah.
We are far from the shallow now.
It's too soon, dude. Too soon.
In the song to say, personally, the songs from the film, because I was actually having a chat with my parents about this. What defines a film about music and a musical? Because this isn't a musical in any sense. However, the songs are very poignant towards the story. The song, Maybe It's Time We Should Let the Always Die. The Shallows, obviously, as a song as well. You've also got whatever song,
the final song,
the Why Did You Do That Saturday Night Live song was very, and I'll Never Love Again at the end, which I'm now going to talk about. The ending,
beautiful edit as well.
Amazing.
In that final ending,
phenomenal. That was the moment that made me tear up. So she's asked back on stage to do his funeral, and she sings the song that he'd written. She sings it absolutely flawlessly. It looks like it's done in one take. And then just before you are about to hear the massive crescendo of the final verse, it cuts to him quietly singing it along with her for the first time at the piano. Not even like a fade cut. It is a jump straight away, hard hitting, straight into it. You see her building up, and then suddenly you see him just kind of playing it very quietly to her. And she's back in love with him again, and he's in love with her, and everything's perfect. And what a stunning way to finish a film.
There's only one really nitpicky thing I'm going to say about the final shot moment of this film. Completely agree. That was a beautiful edit there, where it, it cut to the more stripped back, heart and soul of what the song was about, and that's tying everything together. Where he says, "When you sing, it has to come from the heart. It has to be about something," and we see exactly in that moment what it was about. What I didn't like was how the camera. This would have been great. I think it would have been great if it was all done in one shot, and it mostly is, I think. But there's a moment where she's singing during the first verse, and it's almost like a music video of like a highlight reel of what we've already seen in the film of them together. I could have done without that. We know exactly who she's singing about. We know why she's singing about it. I didn't need to see that like cheesy CW like TV show montage of them together in slow motion during the song.
Like something that I do quite like is the music video for the actual song "The Shallow" is very similar to that scene that they do at the end, where it just kind of shows the highlights of it. That would have been well done if that was at the part of the end credit sequence.
Yeah,
but I don't think it should have been part of the actual film. I feel like they're trying to go for not like a La La Land-esque type film ending. I'm trying to think of a film or something. There was an episode of Black Mirror about the person who could rewind stuff in his head with the chip. And he's taking the chip out at the end, and the last thing he sees is all of the memories of his wife. I think they were going for something like that. So it's kind of like a flashback of his last, most precious memories coming forward as it gets emotional. And it does draw you out of the scene. I'm okay with it in that sense, and I think it's okay. I'm not sure how well it would have worked if it was done completely in one take and one shot, and it just focused on her. But
I think it would have been more like, oh, what's the song that Emma Stone sings in La La Land?
Oh,
Here's to the ones who dream. I think it would have been more like that.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's up to the viewer. That's up, you know, the jury's out on that one, whether it would have worked equal, better, or, you know.
As far as film endings for the last 5-10 years, you still can't top Chazelle with the Whiplash ending or the La La Land ending, which are two perfect endings for films in my head.
Yeah.
And we will see what First Man brings us when that comes out soon.
I think that's not next week, is it? It's the week after, I think. Next week we've got Halloween, and then I think that wait, no, I think First Man is out next week. It's out on the 12th.
But either way, if we're saying recommendations for this film, I think we've sold it enough. But
yeah, absolutely.
This is, for me at least, the best film of the year so far, and it'd be very difficult to top it. You need to see it. Even if you've watched all the way through to this review, you know all the spoilers or anything like that. I'm going to go watch it again. When you see an amazing piece of cinema, you just got to go for it. You just have to. And I went into it completely blind without any expectations, and I came away from it in a babbling wreck.
Me too. And I was pretty much on a downer for the entire rest of the day. I was mulling this film over, a lot of it. I was kind of walking around in the stupor after the movie finished, in all honesty, sort of assessing everything that happened. But absolutely. What does kind of suck, though, is that I think that Lady Gaga does have this in the bag for Best Original Song. And before this point, I was really hoping that Celine Dion would get it with Ashes from Deadpool 2, because that song is incredible. I think that's been picked to the post with this one, though, unfortunately, or fortunately, some people might say. Everything you just said, fantastic performances, beautiful filmmaking, poignant, you know, a film that's going to stay with you. It's got staying power. It's got, you know, it's going to last there, and that's ultimately why you want to go to the movies. You know, a movie needs to have an effect on you in some way. And after all the bad movies we've had this year, I'm actually so grateful we're finally getting into Oscar season now, where we will get these movies that will. I know, it's nice. Like, I remember good movies; they were a thing. Yeah, and I mean, this is a perfect way to start the Oscar season, if you will, even though we're still only in October. But that'll do it for our review on A Star is Born. Be sure to comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought of this movie. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? Have you seen the previous versions? Anything surrounding this movie, the previous versions, or even Oscar season, I guess, at this point, please do let us know. Thank you to everyone that's joined us in the comments today and got a conversation going. It's always good to see you guys' comments. I will be on probably within an hour or so for a review for Venom. I'll be on with George for that. And tomorrow I will be back with you, Tate, for a review on Johnny English Strikes Again. A lot of stuff's happening. There's a lot of trailers I need to do reactions for. They'll be coming all next week. And there might be some big changes coming to the channel. So watch this space. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon. Stay updated with all of our content. Until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.